Billionaire father surprises poor little girl, caring for his son who got lost in the park. What happens next is incredible. The grey sky covered the nearly empty park that fall afternoon. Josie walked alone among the benches and trees, her small steps dragging with exhaustion. She was only 6 years old, but her eyes already knew the weight of loneliness. She clutched her thin jacket against her body. Her stomach rumbled. She hadn't eaten since yesterday. With her cold fingers, she touched her right pocket, where she kept her only treasure, a crumpled photo. For a moment, she stopped and took out the photo. The paper was creased at the corners, but the image was still clear. In it, a young woman smiled, hugging a smaller Josie. Lena, her mother. Josie traced her finger over the image, as if she could feel the warmth of that hug again. "I miss you," she whispered, carefully putting the photo away. It had been a year since Lena was gone, a year of changes Josie never asked for. After her mother's death, only Vince was left, the stepfather who never looked at her as a daughter. He tolerated her for a few months, until one morning he left her sitting on the sidewalk with a plastic bag containing a few clothes. "Wait here, I'll be right back," he said, but he never came back. Since then, Josie wandered the streets, sleeping in shelters when she was lucky, or under awnings when she wasn't. She learned quickly how to survive, which diners threw out still good food, which people seemed safe, how to stay invisible when necessary. The park had become her refuge for the past few days. It was safer than the busy streets, and sometimes people left half-eaten snacks in the trash cans. Josie continued her walk, looking at the ground for lost coins, when a sound caught her attention. It was a cry coming from behind a wooden bench. She stopped, hesitant. Her instincts told her to move on, not to get involved. But something pulled her toward the sound. Behind the bench, huddled and shivering, was a boy smaller than her. Messy blonde hair, face red from crying, a navy blue jacket that looked new and warm. "Hi," Josie said softly, so as not to scare him. The boy lifted his wet face and stared at her with wide eyes. "Who are you?" "My name is Josie." "What's yours?" He sniffled, wiping his nose with the sleeve of his jacket. "Asher." "Why are you crying, Asher?" "I got lost from my dad," he sobbed. "We were playing hide-and-seek, and I went too far, and now I don't know where he is." Josie looked around. There were no adults nearby. She sat down next to him, feeling the cold of the grass through her thin pants. "How long have you been here?" "I don't know," Asher replied, hugging his knees. "It feels like a long time." The fear in his eyes was familiar to Josie. She knew that feeling of abandonment, of not knowing where to go, all too well. "Your dad will find you," she said, with a certainty she didn't feel. "But in the meantime, I can stay here with you." Asher looked at her, suspicious. "Promise?" "Promise." A cold wind blew through the trees, making Josie shiver. Asher noticed and moved a little closer to her. The warmth of the small body next to hers was comforting. "Are you cold?" he asked. Josie shrugged. "A little. But I'm used to it." "My dad says we shouldn't get used to bad things," Asher commented, with that innocent wisdom of children. A faint smile appeared on Josie's lips. "Your dad sounds nice." "He's the best dad in the world," Asher stated, and then his face contorted again. "What if he never finds me?" The crying started again. Josie felt a tightness in her chest. Without thinking too much, she took the boy's small, cold hand in hers. "You know what my mum used to do when I was sad?" she asked. Asher shook his head, still sobbing. "She would sing to me, a special song that only the two of us knew." Asher's eyes fixed on her, curious despite the tears. "What song?" Josie hesitated. It was a treasure as intimate as the photo in her pocket, something she didn't share with anyone. But the fear in Asher's eyes made her change her mind. She took a deep breath and began to sing softly, almost a whisper. "Stars in the sky, a light on my way. Even alone, I'm not afraid. Because your love guides me, it keeps me safe, like a hug that never fades away." Josie's voice was soft and a little shaky, but the melody flowed delicately. As she sang, she could almost feel her mother's fingers stroking her hair, just as they did every night before she went to sleep. Asher stopped crying. His eyes were now fixed on Josie, mesmerized by the song. When she finished, a comfortable silence hung between them. "Again?" he asked in a low voice. Josie smiled and started the song again. This time, Asher rested his head on her shoulder, as if they were old friends. For a moment, Josie didn't feel so alone. She sang one more time, until she noticed Asher's breathing was calmer. The boy was no longer crying, just holding her hand tightly. "You sing pretty," he said. "Thanks. My mum sang better." "Where is she?" The question hit Josie like a punch. She swallowed hard before answering. "She died a year ago." Asher's eyes widened. "Like my mum." It was Josie's turn to be surprised. "Your mum died too?" He nodded, looking at his own hands. "Dad said she became a star, the brightest one in the sky." "My mum must be a star too then," Josie murmured, looking up at the sky, which was beginning to darken. "I think our mums are friends up there," Asher said, with the simplicity of his 5 years. The idea was comforting. Josie imagined her mom and Asher's mom, 2 stars shining side by side and watching over them. "Your song talked about stars," Asher observed. "Maybe your mom already knew she was going to become one." Josie had never thought of that. The song took on a new meaning with Asher's words. "You're right," she agreed, squeezing his hand. At that moment, a shout cut through the air. "Asher! Asher, where are you?" The boy's face lit up. "It's Dad." He jumped to his feet, but didn't let go of Josie's hand. Instead, he pulled her up with him. "Come on. I want to introduce you to my dad." Josie hesitated. Adults meant questions. Questions about where she lived, where her parents were. Questions that could end with her being taken to a shelter, or worse, back to Vince's if they found him. But before she could protest, Asher was already pulling her toward the voice. A tall man appeared, running down the park path, his face twisted with worry. Upon seeing his son, his expression transformed into pure relief. "Asher, thank God." He knelt and opened his arms. The boy let go of Josie's hand and ran to his father, who hugged him tightly. Josie stood still, watching the reunion, feeling a pang of envy and, at the same time, happiness for Asher. "Don't you ever do that again," the man said, his voice choked with emotion. "I was worried sick." "Sorry, Daddy," Asher murmured against his father's shoulder. Then he pulled back a little and pointed to Josie. "But Josie took care of me. She sang a special song and held my hand so I wouldn't be scared." The man lifted his eyes to Josie, as if only now noticing her presence. She took a step back instinctively. "Hello, Josie," he said with a gentle smile. "I'm Harrison, Asher's father. Thank you so much for looking after him." Josie just nodded, not knowing what to say. Harrison stood up, still holding Asher's hand, and approached her. "Are you here alone? Where are your parents?" The question she feared. Josie looked down at her own shoes, worn out and a size too big for her feet. "My mom died," she answered softly, "and my stepfather, he left me." Harrison frowned, confused. "What do you mean, left you? Where?" "On the street. He said he'd be back, but—" She shrugged, not finishing the sentence. A heavy silence fell between them. Harrison looked at Josie as if trying to process what he had just heard. Then he knelt again, getting down to her level. "How long ago was that, Josie?" "I don't know for sure. Many days." "And where have you been sleeping? How have you been eating?" Josie hesitated. Lying to adults was a survival rule on the streets, but something in Harrison's eyes made her feel she could trust him anywhere. "Sometimes in shelters, when there's a spot, and I eat what I find, or what people give me." Harrison's face tightened with something that looked like pain. He looked at his son, then back at Josie. "You must be hungry now, aren't you?" In response, Josie's stomach growled loudly. She blushed, embarrassed. "A little," she admitted. Harrison took his wallet from his pocket and held out a few bills to her. "Here, buy yourself something to eat." Josie looked at the money, but didn't take it. It wasn't out of pride. On the streets, she had learned to accept help when offered, but something stopped her from taking those bills. Maybe it was the way Harrison looked at her, not with pity, but with genuine concern. You don't have to, she said. I'll find something. Daddy, Asher interrupted, pulling on Harrison's coat sleeve. Could Josie have dinner with us? Harrison smiled at his son. That's a great idea. He turned to Josie. What do you think? We can go to a restaurant nearby. Then we can think about what to do to help you. Josie bit her lip, undecided. Trusting strangers was dangerous. Her experience on the streets had taught her that, but Harrison seemed different, and the idea of a hot meal was too tempting. Okay, she finally agreed. Yay! Asher celebrated, taking Josie's hand again. Let's get hamburgers. Harrison laughed. Yeah, we can get whatever you want. He held out his other hand to Josie. Shall we? She hesitated for a second before accepting the offered hand. It was large and warm, and it held hers firmly, but without hurting, like her mother's hand used to. The three of them walked out of the park, Josie between Harrison and Asher, each holding one of her hands. It was strange to be like this, protected on both sides. An almost forgotten feeling of safety began to grow inside her. The restaurant was just 2 blocks away. It was cozy, with yellow lights and wooden tables. A smell of hot food made Josie's stomach rumble again. They sat at a table near the window, and Harrison helped the children choose from the menu. Josie ordered a hamburger with fries, just like Asher. When the food arrived, she controlled herself not to devour it all at once. She ate slowly, savoring every bite, while listening to Asher tell his father how he had gotten lost in the park. And then I cried a lot, he was saying, gesturing with a French fry. Till Josie showed up and sang the Star Song to me. What song is that? Harrison asked, looking at Josie with interest. She shrugged, shy. It's just a song my mum used to sing to me. She sings really well, Daddy, Asher assured him. It made me stop crying right away. Harrison smiled. Then I should thank you twice. For calming him down and for staying by his side. Josie felt her face heat up at the compliment. She wasn't used to receiving positive attention from adults. On the streets, they usually ignored her or, at most, gave her a few coins out of pity. It was nothing, she murmured. He helped me too, I was alone. The last word came out like a sigh. Harrison watched her for a moment, as if trying to see beyond what she was saying. How long ago did your mother pass away, Josie? A year ago. She got very sick. I'm so sorry, Harrison said, and for the first time, Josie believed someone truly was. And your stepfather? What's his name? Vince, she replied, her voice hardening slightly. He never really liked me. He only put up with me because of my mom. When she died. She didn't finish, but she didn't need to. Harrison understood. And you don't have any other relatives, grandparents, uncles, aunts? Josie shook her head. It was just my mom. She always said it was just the two of us against the world. Silence fell over the table. Asher, sensing the shift in mood, took Josie's hand on the table. My mom died too, he said, as if sharing a secret. 2 years ago. She was very pretty. I'm sure she was, Josie replied. Do you have a picture of your mom? Asher asked. Josie nodded and carefully took the crumpled photo from her pocket. She handed it to Asher, who examined it with interest. So she was pretty like you, he concluded, handing the photo back. Thank you. Josie smiled, carefully putting the photo away. It was her most precious possession. Harrison watched the interaction with a thoughtful expression. There was something in his eyes, a decision being made. Josie, he began hesitantly, I can't let you go back to the streets. It wouldn't be right. She stared at him, not understanding. But there's nowhere else for me to go. She could live with us, Asher suggested suddenly, with the naturalness only children have. We have a spare room, don't we, Daddy? The one that was Grandpa's before he went to live in the retirement home. Harrison looked at his son, surprised by the suggestion. Then his eyes turned to Josie. She was holding her breath, hardly daring to believe what she had just heard. Asher's right, Harrison said finally. We have space at home. You could stay with us, at least for now, until we figure out what to do. Can I? Josie's voice came out small, incredulous. Of course you can, Harrison confirmed, with a gentle smile. No one should be alone at your age, especially not on the streets. Josie didn't know what to say. For weeks, she had been surviving day by day, not thinking beyond the next meal or the next place to sleep. The idea of having a roof, a bed, guaranteed food, it was almost impossible to believe. "Just for tonight," she said finally, afraid of getting too attached to the offer. "I don't want to be any trouble." "It's no trouble at all," Harrison assured her, "and you can stay as long as you need." Asher clapped his hands, excited. "It'll be like a sleepover." Josie smiled, infected by the boy's enthusiasm. For the first time in a long time, she felt a spark of hope. When they finished eating, they left the restaurant for the cold night. Harrison held Asher's hand and, after a moment's hesitation, extended his other hand to Josie. She accepted, feeling the warmth radiating from his touch. As they walked toward the car, Josie looked up at the sky. The first stars were beginning to appear. She wondered if her mother was watching from one of them, guiding her path to this unexpected encounter. In the pocket of her jacket, the crumpled photo seemed a little lighter. After lunch, Harrison watched Josie discreetly as she finished the last piece of apple pie. Her eyes, once so dull, now had a shy sparkle. Her cheeks, once pale, now had a faint blush. It was as if the simple meal had restored some of the life that seemed to have abandoned that fragile body. "Thank you for the food," she said, wiping her mouth with a napkin. "I haven't eaten something this good I can't even remember." Harrison smiled, leaving a few bills under the plate to cover the bill and the tip. "We're not done yet," he replied, standing up. "Let's go." "Where to?" Josie asked, suspicion returning to her features. After years on the streets, any kindness still seemed to hide a trap. "You need new clothes," he explained simply. "There's a department store nearby." They walked side by side through the busy downtown streets. Harrison with his well-cut coat and confident posture, Josie huddled in her worn-out hoodie, her worn sneakers barely protecting her feet from the cold that was beginning to set in with the arrival of fall. The contrast between them did not go unnoticed by passers-by. Some looked with curiosity, others with poorly disguised disapproval. Josie kept her head down, as if she wanted to disappear. "Don't mind them," Harrison murmured, noticing her discomfort. "People always judge what they don't understand." The store was spacious and well lit, with rows of clothes organized by color and style. For Harrison, it was just another store. For Josie, it looked like an alien world. "Okay, pick whatever you want," he said, pointing to the women's sections. "Don't worry about the prices." Josie stood frozen, her eyes scanning the endless options. How long had it been since she had entered a store as a customer? How long had it been since her clothes came only from donations or from dumpsters behind stores? I don't know where to start," she confessed, her voice barely audible. Harrison called over a saleswoman, a middle-aged woman with a kind smile, and explained the situation in a low voice. Without asking questions, the woman nodded and approached Josie. "How about we start with the basics? Jeans, t-shirts, a good coat for the coming winter." Slowly, Josie began to relax. The saleswoman, with tact and professionalism, helped her choose pieces that fit her thin body well. A pair of dark blue jeans, a few t-shirts in soft tones, a soft sweater, thick socks, a lined jacket for the colder days. In the fitting room, Josie faced her reflection in the mirror, almost not recognizing the woman staring back at her. The new clothes transformed her appearance, but there was something more. A recovered dignity, perhaps. Harrison waited patiently, answering some emails on his phone. When Josie came out of the fitting room wearing jeans and a light blue t-shirt, he looked up and smiled. "Much better," was all he said. The last stop was the shoe department. A pair of comfortable sneakers and boots for winter completed the shopping. At the register, Harrison handed over his card without hesitation, ignoring Josie's surprised look when she saw the total. You didn't have to spend so much on me," she murmured as they left the store carrying bags. "It was nothing," he replied sincerely. "Besides, these are just basic things that everyone deserves to have." On the way back to the car, they stopped at a drugstore. Harrison insisted that she choose personal hygiene items: shampoo, conditioner, toothbrush, deodorant. Small luxuries that most people take for granted, but which become items of extreme value on the streets. Once in the car, with the bags on the back seat, Harrison hesitated before starting the engine. "Josie," he began, choosing his words carefully, "I have a guest room in my house. You can stay there for a few days until you decide what you want to do." The silence that followed was thick. Josie looked out the window, the sky beginning to darken, heralding the end of the afternoon. "Why are you doing this for me?" she finally asked, her voice choked with emotion. "You don't even know me." Harrison thought about the answer for a moment. "Maybe because someone did the same for me once, when I needed it," he replied simply. "I'm not asking for anything in return, Josie, just offering a safe place for a few days." She nodded slowly, unable to find words to express the mixture of gratitude and distrust that still fought within her. Harrison's house was in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of the city. It wasn't luxurious, but comfortable and welcoming. 2 bedrooms, a spacious living room, a well-equipped kitchen. For Josie, accustomed to overpasses and park benches, it looked like a palace. "The bathroom is over there," he indicated, showing her the house. "Feel free to take a shower. I'll prepare something for us to eat." The hot shower was almost a religious experience. Josie let the water run over her body, washing away not only the accumulated dirt, but layers of fear and despair. She used the new shampoo, feeling the fresh scent of lavender fill the bathroom. The clean clothes against her clean skin brought a sensation she had forgotten was possible. Dinner was simple, homemade soup and sandwiches, but for Josie it was another feast. They talked little, mostly about light subjects. Harrison didn't ask questions about her past or how she had ended up on the streets. There would be time for that, if she wanted to share. After helping to wash the dishes, Josie was guided to the guest room. The bed was made with clean sheets and a soft comforter. On the nightstand, a soft light lamp. "Good night, Josie," Harrison said at the door. "Rest well." Alone in the room, Josie opened her worn backpack, the only item she carried from her previous life. From an inner pocket, carefully protected in a plastic bag, she took out a crumpled and faded photograph. A young woman smiled at the camera, with a little girl in her arms. She lay down on the bed, the softness of the mattress almost unknown to her body, accustomed to the hardness of concrete. She hugged the photograph to her chest, silent tears streaming down her face, no longer tears of despair, but of relief. For the first time in years, Josie fell asleep with a full stomach, in a warm bed, holding the last memory of her mother. And for the first time in a long time, she felt something she had forgotten what it was like. Hope. Josie woke up to a ray of sunshine coming through the window and touching her face. For a moment, she was confused. The bed was too soft, the room too big to be a shelter. Then she remembered she was at Harrison and Asher's house. She sat up in bed, still wrapped in the comfort of the warm blanket. The previous night seemed like a dream. After dinner at the restaurant, Harrison had brought her home. He showed her a guest room with a bed that seemed huge for her small body. He gave her a clean t-shirt to use as pajamas. The shirt was so big on her it looked like a dress, but it was soft and smelled of fabric softener. Before sleeping, Josie placed her mother's photo under her pillow, her ritual every night wherever she slept. It was the most peaceful sleep she'd had in months. A soft knock on the door brought her back to the present. "Josie, are you awake?" It was Asher's voice. "I am," she replied, getting out of bed. The door opened and Asher's face appeared with an eager smile. "Good morning, Dad made pancakes for breakfast. Come on." Josie followed him down the hall to the kitchen. The sweet smell of pancakes and maple syrup filled the air. Harrison was at the stove, flipping a pancake in the pan. When he saw her, he smiled. "Good morning, Josie. Did you sleep well?" She nodded shyly. "Yes, thank you." "Good. Have a seat. The pancakes are almost ready." Josie sat at the table next to Asher, who was already attacking a pile of pancakes covered in syrup. Harrison placed a plate in front of her with 3 golden pancakes, a generous amount of syrup on top, and some berries on the side. "I hope you like them," he said. Josie took the first bite and her eyes widened. It was delicious, sweet, soft, and warm. She couldn't remember the last time she had eaten something so good for breakfast. "Is it good?" Asher asked, watching her with interest. "Very good," Josie replied between bites. Dad makes the best pancakes in the world. Harrison laughed as he joined them with his own plate. I don't know if they're the best in the world, but I'm glad you're enjoying them. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Josie tried to eat slowly, appreciating each bite, but it was so good it was hard to hold back. So, Harrison finally spoke, what do you guys want to do today? We can show Josie the toys, Asher exclaimed, almost jumping out of his chair with enthusiasm. She hasn't seen the playroom yet. Harrison looked at Josie. What do you think? Want to see Asher's secret treasure? She shrugged, a little embarrassed. Okay. After breakfast, I'll take you there, Asher promised, returning to his pancakes with renewed appetite, as if he needed to finish quickly to start the fun. Harrison watched the two of them for a moment. There was something different about Asher today, a sparkle in his eyes he hadn't seen in a long time. Since Rebecca had died 2 years ago, his son had become quieter, less interested in his games, but now, with Josie here, he seemed to have gained new energy. When they finished eating, Harrison started collecting the plates. You can go play. I'll take care of the dishes. Come on, Josie. Asher took her hand and pulled her out of the kitchen. The playroom is upstairs. She let herself be led up the stairs to the second floor. Asher walked quickly, almost running with excitement, while talking non-stop. I have a lot of cool stuff. Cars, building blocks, a giant track, even a fort that Dad built with me. You're gonna love it. At the end of the hall, he stopped in front of a door decorated with his name in colorful letters. With a dramatic movement, he turned the doorknob and opened the door. Ta-da! Welcome to the best playroom in the universe. Josie took a step forward and stood frozen at the entrance. Her eyes slowly scanned the room, taking in every detail. It was a large, colorful space. The walls were painted light blue, with white clouds near the ceiling. A bookshelf took up an entire wall, filled with toys organized in clear boxes. In the center of the room, there was a toy car track set up on a low table. In a corner was the fort Asher had mentioned, a wooden structure with cushions and a flag on top. There was also a rug with a city design, more building blocks than Josie had ever seen, action figures on a shelf, and a small table with drawing supplies. Wow, she whispered, her eyes wide. I've never seen so many toys together. Asher smiled, proud. Cool, right? Which one do you want to play with first? Josie was speechless. In fact, she had barely had any toys before. When she lived with her mother, they had few resources. Lena would sew rag dolls for her and make toys out of empty boxes. With Vince, she had nothing. On the streets, her toys were pebbles, bottle caps, things she found and kept in her pockets. I don't know. There's so much, she finally replied. Asher thought for a moment. I know, let's build a city with the blocks, and then we can make the cars drive in it. Josie smiled. Okay. They sat on the rug, and Asher started taking the colorful blocks out of a box. He handed a handful to Josie, who examined them carefully, feeling the smooth texture and rounded corners. Oh, we can make a super tall tower, Asher suggested, already stacking pieces, or a castle. What do you think? Can we make a house? Josie asked. Of course. Let's make a really big house, with lots of rooms. They started building side by side. At first, Josie was a bit hesitant, not knowing exactly how the blocks fit together. But she soon got the hang of it and started creating walls and windows. Asher talked non-stop, making up stories about who would live in the house, what life would be like there. Slowly, Josie's shyness melted away. She started laughing at Asher's jokes, suggesting ideas for the construction and creating her own stories. When they finished the house, they moved on to building other structures, a school, a park, a store. Harrison, who had come up quietly after finishing the dishes, watched from the ajar door. He didn't want to interrupt the magical moment happening inside. How long had it been since he heard his son laugh like that? A pure, carefree laugh that came from the bottom of his soul. Since Rebecca's death, the house had become quieter, emptier. As much as he tried, Harrison couldn't fill the hole her absence had left. For Asher, losing his mother so early had been devastating. The cheerful, chatty boy had turned into a quieter child, who often played in silence, without his former enthusiasm. But now, Seeing him with Josie, it was as if a light had been turned on again. The two of them built imaginary worlds together, invented adventures, laughed at jokes only they understood. Josie, who had seemed so fragile and scared the night before, now shone with a contagious joy. A strong emotion tightened Harrison's chest. His eyes filled with tears as he watched the children. It was as if, for a moment, he could see a glimpse of the future, a future where his house was no longer a place of loss, but of new beginnings. The children's laughter echoed down the hall, filling the empty spaces with life. Maybe, Harrison thought, this is how a house should be, full of voices, of stories, of shared dreams. He quietly stepped away from the door, leaving the children entertained in their own world. There was much to resolve, legal matters, paperwork, important decisions to make. But for now, it was enough to know that his house was becoming a home again. The afternoon passed quickly in the playroom. Josie and Asher built entire cities with blocks, raced toy cars, and made up stories for each action figure. When Harrison called them for dinner, they both protested, wanting more time to play. "You can continue tomorrow," he promised. "Tass, now it's time to eat something." In the kitchen, the smell of freshly baked lasagna filled the air. Harrison had prepared a green salad to go with it and orange juice for the children. Josie sat at the table, looking at the food with bright eyes. She still couldn't believe she was here in this beautiful house, with people who treated her so well. "I hope you like lasagna," Harrison said, serving her a portion. "I've never had lasagna," Josie admitted. Asher looked at her, surprised. "Never. It's the best food in the world." She took a bite, and a smile spread across her face. It was delicious, hot, with melted cheese and a sauce that tasted of fresh tomatoes. "Tass, this is really good," she said, after swallowing the first piece. Harrison smiled, pleased. "I'm glad you like it. It's an old family recipe." They ate in silence for a few minutes. Asher would occasionally say something about the toys or about what they would do the next day. Harrison listened attentively, asking questions and making comments. It was such a different environment from what Josie was used to that it felt almost unreal. When the initial excitement of the meal subsided, Harrison turned his gaze to Josie. There was a question in his eyes, a gentle curiosity she had noticed before. "Josie," he began in a calm voice, "would you mind telling me a little more about yourself? About your family?" She stopped eating, her hand holding the fork frozen in midair. It was a natural question, but one that made her stomach clench. Talking about the past always hurt. "There's not much to tell," she said softly. "You don't have to talk if you don't want to," Harrison assured her, "but I'd like to get to know you better. And I also need to understand your situation to know how to help." Josie put down her fork and reached into her pocket. Her fingers touched the familiar paper of the photo. She carefully took it out and placed it on the table. "This is my mom," she said, pushing the photo toward Harrison. Her name was Lena. Harrison picked up the photo gently, as if it were very fragile. In it, a young woman with the same dark eyes as Josie smiled, hugging her small daughter. Despite the crumpled paper and fold marks, Lena's smile still radiated warmth. "She was very beautiful," Harrison commented, returning the photo. "You look like her." Josie held the photo for a moment before putting it back in her pocket. Asher, who had stopped eating to listen, looked at her with curiosity. "My mom was really nice," Josie continued, feeling more confident. "She told me stories every night before I went to sleep, even when she was really tired from work. And she sang that song I showed Asher." "Where did she work?" Harrison asked. "In lots of places. Sometimes she cleaned houses. Other times she worked in a restaurant washing dishes. We moved around a lot." "And your father? Did you know him?" Josie shook her head. "My mom said he left before I was born. She never talked much about him." A silence fell over the table. Josie knew the next question would be about Vince. She played with the food on her plate, pushing a piece of lasagna from one side to the other. "And your stepfather? You mentioned a Vince yesterday." Josie swallowed hard. The mere mention of his name made her body tense up. "He showed up when I was 4. At first, he was nice. He brought presents for me and my mom. But then he changed." "What do you mean, changed?" Harrison asked in a soft voice. "He started drinking a lot. He'd get angry over anything. He yelled at my mum. Josie paused, remembering nights when she would hide under the covers to not hear the fights. She cried a lot because of him. Harrison nodded, his face showing he understood what she wasn't saying explicitly. "And what happened to your mum, Josie?" he asked gently. "She got sick," Josie replied, her voice almost a whisper. "First it was just a cough, then it got worse. She was tired all the time, couldn't work properly. Vince got even angrier because she wasn't bringing in money." Harrison pressed his lips together, but didn't interrupt. "One day she couldn't get out of bed anymore. She was so weak." Josie felt a lump in her throat. "Vince called an ambulance, but it was too late. She died at the hospital." Asher, who had been listening in silence, reached his hand across the table and touched Josie's arm. "My mum died in the hospital too," he said. "It's very sad." Josie nodded, grateful for the gesture. Asher's simple understanding helped ease the pain of the memory. "And after your mother passed away?" Harrison asked, trying to complete the story. "Vince stayed with me for a while, but he didn't want to take care of me. He said I was a burden, that I cost too much money." Josie shrugged, as if trying to make herself smaller. "One day he took me to the city. He stopped the car on a busy street, gave me a bag with some clothes, and told me to wait there, that he'd be right back." "And he never came back," Harrison completed, his voice soft but tense. Josie confirmed with a nod. "Son, I waited all day. When it got dark, a lady asked me if I was lost. I said my stepfather was coming back, but I don't think she believed me. She took me to a shelter." "How long did you stay at the shelter?" "A few weeks. But I didn't like it there. It was noisy. The other kids took my things. One girl tried to steal my mum's photo." Josie protectively touched her pocket. "So I ran away." Harrison took a deep breath, trying to contain the emotion he felt. A 6-year-old child, alone on the streets. It was unthinkable. "What was it like, living on the streets?" he asked, and hesitantly. Josie looked out the kitchen window, at the darkness outside. Her memories of the past few months were a confused mix of fear, cold, and hunger. "The cold hurt," she said finally. "I slept wrapped in cardboard. I was hungry. But the worst part was not having anyone waiting for me." The last sentence came out as a whisper, almost inaudible. Harrison felt his heart ache. He knew that feeling well, the loneliness that comes after losing someone you love. But at least he had Asher, and Asher had him. Josie had had no one. "How did you get food?" he asked. "Sometimes people gave it to me, at the doors of restaurants or bakeries. Other times I'd take leftovers from trash cans." She hesitated. "Once, I stole an apple from a market. I felt bad afterward." "You did what you had to do to survive," Harrison said firmly. "You don't have to feel bad about that." Josie looked up, surprised by his reaction. She had expected a scolding, not understanding. "Want more lasagna?" Harrison asked, gently changing the subject when he noticed she needed a break. Josie nodded, relieved. Harrison served another piece for her and for Asher, who had listened to the whole story in unusual silence. "My dad makes us feel safe too," Asher commented suddenly. "When I have nightmares, he always comes to my room and stays until I fall back asleep." Josie smiled at him. "Your dad seems very nice." "He's the best dad in the world," Asher declared with conviction. "So now he can take care of you too." Harrison exchanged a look with Josie. There was a silent question there, a possibility that hung in the air between them. "If you want, of course," he added carefully. "You don't have to decide anything right now. But I want you to know that you can stay here as long as you need." Josie looked down at her plate, processing what she had just heard. The idea of having a place to stay, of not having to worry about the next shelter or the next meal, was almost too big to comprehend. Harrison reached out his hand and gently touched Josie's. "Your mother seemed like a wonderful person," he said. "She must be happy that you're with us now." The words touched something deep inside Josie. She had never thought of it that way, that her mother could see her, know where she was. The idea brought unexpected comfort. "Do you really think so?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I'm sure of it," Harrison replied. "All mothers want their children to be safe and happy. Wherever she is, I know she's relieved that you're no longer alone." Josie felt a tear run down her face. It wasn't a tear of sadness, but of relief. as if a weight she had been carrying for a long time was beginning to lift. "Thank you," she whispered, "for all of this." Harrison smiled at her, his eyes also moist. "And you don't have to thank me. Sometimes people just find each other when they need each other the most." The rest of the dinner passed in a comfortable silence. The difficult words had been said, the painful memories brought to light. What remained now was the feeling that something was beginning, something new, fragile, but full of possibilities. After dinner, as the children were getting ready for bed, Josie took her mother's photo from her pocket and carefully placed it on the nightstand. For the first time, she didn't put it under her pillow. Somehow, she knew she no longer needed to hold it so close to feel safe. "Good night, Mummy," she whispered to the photo. "I think I've found a good place to stay." The days at Harrison's house began to fall into a quiet routine. In the morning, they all had breakfast together. Afterward, while Harrison worked in his office downstairs, the children played in the playroom. At lunch, they would meet again. In the afternoon, they sometimes watched a movie or played board games. Josie was still surprised by every little comfort: hot water in the shower, clean clothes, regular meals. Slowly, the shadows in her eyes diminished, giving way to a cautious serenity. That Wednesday afternoon, the sky darkened early and it began to rain. Large drops beat against the windows as Josie and Asher drew at the kitchen table. Harrison had left earlier, saying he needed to take care of some things at work and then go shopping. "What are you drawing?" Asher asked, craning his neck to see Josie's paper. "A house," she replied, focused on the blue pencil she was using to color the roof. "Just like this one." The drawing showed a two-story house with large windows and a tree next to it. There were 3 figures in front, 2 small and 1 large. "Is that you?" Asher pointed to one of the small figures. "Yes, and this is you." She indicated the other small figure. "And this is your dad." Asher smiled, pleased to be in the drawing. "It looks nice. Can I put it in my room?" Josie looked up, surprised by the request. "No, do you really want it?" "Of course. It's a drawing of our house." "Our house." The words made something warm spread in Josie's chest. She didn't yet think of the house as hers, but she felt more and more at ease there. "Okay," she agreed, handing the drawing to Asher when she finished. "You can have it." The rain continued for the rest of the afternoon. The children had already moved on from drawing to a memory game when they heard the front door open. "I'm home!" Harrison's voice echoed from the entrance hall. "Daddy!" Asher jumped from his chair and ran to greet him. Josie followed more slowly, still hesitant about her place in this house. She stopped at the kitchen door, watching Harrison bend down to hug his son. His hair was wet from the rain and he was carrying several bags. "Did you bring what I asked for?" Asher asked, trying to peek inside the bags. "Yes, the cereal bars you like are in here," Harrison laughed, "and I bought a few more things for all of us." His gaze met Josie's and he smiled. "Hello, Josie, how was your day?" "It was good," she replied. "We drew and played a game." "Great. Can you help me with the groceries? There are still a few more bags in the car." Asher ran out to the garage, eager to help. Josie picked up one of the bags Harrison had placed on the floor and followed him to the kitchen. They worked together, putting away the groceries. Fruit in the fruit bowl, vegetables in the refrigerator drawer, cereal in the cabinet. Harrison explained to Josie where everything went, and she memorized it carefully. When they finished, Harrison picked up a smaller paper bag that he had set aside. "Josie," he said, with a different tone of voice, "I have something for you." She looked at him curiously. Harrison held the bag out to her. "It's a gift. I hope you like it." Josie took the bag carefully, as if it might break. No one, besides her mother, had ever given her a gift before. "Open it," Asher encouraged, almost as excited as if the gift were for him. With careful fingers, Josie opened the bag and looked inside. Her eyes widened when she saw what was there. Even more carefully, she took the gift out of the bag. It was a rag doll. Not a simple doll, but one made with soft fabric, hand-embroidered details, and a flowered dress in shades of lilac and yellow. The hair was made of brown yarn, tied in 2 braids, and the face had a gentle smile embroidered with red thread. Josie held the doll in her hands, speechless. she felt a strange lump in her throat, one she couldn't swallow. "Do you like it?" Harrison asked, uncertain in the face of her silence. "I've never had one so beautiful," Josie finally managed to say, her voice choked with emotion. Harrison knelt to get to her level. "Every child deserves to have something special of their own. I thought you'd like a companion." Josie pressed the doll against her chest, feeling the softness of the fabric. A gift. A gift just for her. "The shop where I bought it has a lady who makes these dolls by hand," Harrison continued. "No two are alike. I chose this one especially for you." "She has a dress just like the one you drew yesterday," Asher observed, pointing to the doll's clothes. It was true. The day before, Josie had drawn a girl with a flowered dress, very similar to the doll's. She hadn't noticed the resemblance until Asher mentioned it. "Thank you," Josie said, still hugging the doll. The words seemed too small to express what she felt. Harrison smiled, his eyes shining in a way Josie hadn't seen before. There was something there, pride, perhaps, or simply the satisfaction of seeing her happy. "You're welcome, little one. Now, how about we have dinner? I brought pizza." Dinner was lively, with Asher telling stories and making jokes. Josie laughed, more open than in previous days, but without letting go of the doll, which she kept on her lap while she ate. "What are you going to name her?" Asher asked, pointing to the doll. Josie thought for a moment. "Lena," she finally replied. "Sound like my mom?" Harrison nodded, approving the choice. "That's a beautiful name." After dinner, at bedtime, Harrison went to the room Josie was using to say goodnight. He found her already in bed, covered up to her chin, with the new doll on one side and her mother's photo propped up on the nightstand on the other. "Are you okay?" he asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. Josie nodded. "Thank you again for the doll." "You don't have to thank me. I'm glad you liked it." He tucked the blanket around her. "You know, Josie, I want you to feel at home here. I know it's all still very new, but I hope one day you'll feel as comfortable as Asher does." She looked at him with serious eyes, assessing the sincerity of his words. "You're not going to send me away like Vince did?" The question hit Harrison like a punch. "No, Josie, I would never do that. You can stay here for as long as you want, for as long as you need." "Promise?" "I promise." She seemed to relax a little, sinking deeper into the soft pillow. Harrison got up to leave, but Josie's small voice stopped him. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why are you doing all this for me? You didn't even know me." Harrison thought for a moment before answering. "Sometimes, Josie, life puts us on the right path at the right time. You helped Asher when he was lost and scared. Maybe now it's our turn to help you." Josie considered the answer, her gaze wandering to her mother's photo. "My mom used to say that good people always find each other sooner or later." "Your mom sounded very wise," Harrison smiled. "Now get some rest. We'll be here when you wake up." He leaned in and, after a brief hesitation, gave Josie a soft kiss on the forehead. The gesture was so natural, so paternal, that it surprised them both. "Good night, Josie." "Good night," she replied, her voice already sleepy. When Harrison left, closing the door carefully, Josie turned over in bed. With one hand, she touched her mother's photo, as she did every night. With the other, she hugged the new doll, feeling the soft fabric against her face. For the first time in a long time, there was no fear in her heart as she fell asleep. Just a strange and almost forgotten sense of security, of belonging, of affection. And so, between the memory of a lost love and the promise of a new beginning, Josie fell asleep. 2 weeks passed since Josie's arrival. The house, once quiet, now had a new rhythm. The mornings began with children's voices, laughter during breakfast, and the constant exchange of ideas between two children who, despite the short time together, seemed to understand each other perfectly. Harrison watched this transformation with a mixture of joy and concern. Joy at seeing his son happy again, at witnessing Josie's slow but steady blossoming. Concern because he knew the current situation was temporary, at least from a legal standpoint. On a Tuesday, while the children were in the living room watching a movie, Harrison shut himself in his office and made a call he had been putting off. "Dr. Elena Morales, office," a female voice answered. "Hello, this is Harrison Wells. I'd like to make an appointment with Dr. Morales as soon as possible. Regarding what, sir? Harrison hesitated for a second. Adoption. It's about a possible adoption. 2 hours after the call, Harrison entered the elegant law firm downtown. Eleanor Morales, a lawyer specializing in family law, greeted him with a firm handshake. Mr. Wells, please have a seat. Tell me about your situation. Harrison explained everything. The encounter in the park, Josie's story, the last 2 weeks. Elena listened attentively, making occasional notes. I understand your concern and your desire to help this child, she said when he finished, but we need to proceed with care. First, we need to verify if she truly has no legal guardians. Her stepfather abandoned her, Harrison argued, a hint of irritation in his voice. Yes, and that is child abandonment, a crime, Elena agreed, but legally, he may still have rights over her, unless those rights are formally terminated. Harrison felt a tightness in his chest. The idea that Vince could show up and take Josie away was unbearable. What do we need to do? First, I'll request an investigation into the stepfather. Vincent, correct? We need to locate the deceased mother's documents, check for a will, any other relatives. In parallel, we can start the process for you to become Josie's temporary guardian. And what about the adoption? Elena smiled kindly. One step at a time, Mr. Wells. Adoption is a long process. But if there is truly no one with legal rights over Josie, and if she agrees, we can pursue that path. Harrison left the office with a folder full of documents to fill out and a list of things to do. On his way home, he stopped at a school supply store. Josie would need a uniform, notebooks, pencils. It was time for her to go back to school, the same one Asher attended. The next morning, as the children were having breakfast, Harrison announced, I have a surprise for you both. We're going to spend the day downtown today. Asher immediately cheered. Are we going to the movies or the amusement park? Better, Harrison smiled. We're going to buy school supplies for Josie. She's going to start at your school next week. Josie's eyes widened. I'm going to school. Of course, Harrison replied, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. All children need to go to school, and I thought it would be nice for you to be in the same school as Asher. That's going to be awesome, Asher exclaimed. I can introduce you to all my friends. Josie remained quiet, processing the information. School meant routine, stability, normality, things she had lost a long time ago. You don't want to go? Harrison asked, noticing her hesitation. I do, she finally replied. I'm just surprised. Harrison knelt beside her, getting to her eye level. Josie, as long as you are here, you will have everything you need. School, clothes, food, a home. Do you understand that? She nodded slowly, but Harrison noticed the doubt in her eyes. The as long as hung between them, a reminder that nothing was guaranteed, that everything could change in an instant. The downtown area was bustling on that sunny Saturday morning. Families were out for a walk, enjoying the good weather after days of rain. Harrison parked near a large department store. First, we'll buy the uniform, he said, guiding the children by the hand. Then we'll go to the bookstore for notebooks and books. Josie walked between Harrison and Asher, holding both their hands. She was wearing a yellow dress that Harrison had bought a few days earlier, her first new dress in years. Her hair, once always tangled, was now clean and combed into a braid that Harrison had learned to do by watching online tutorials. In the children's section of the store, a saleswoman greeted them with a smile. "Pi, we need the uniform for Westbrook Elementary School," Harrison explained. "For her." The saleswoman looked at Josie attentively. "What size does she wear?" Harrison realized he didn't know. Josie had always been so small that she seemed younger than her age. "Let's try a few on to see," the saleswoman suggested kindly. Half an hour later, they left the store with bags containing 2 complete sets of the uniform. A navy blue skirt, a white blouse, a sweater with the school emblem, white socks, and black shoes. "Now to the bookstore." Asher pulled his father, excited. The bookstore was on the other side of the central square. To get there, they had to cross a busy area with shops, cafes, and benches. Josie looked at everything with curiosity. How long had it been since she walked through the city center like this? without fear, without hunger, without feeling invisible. That's when it happened. A voice cut through the crowd's buzz. "Josie? Josie?" She froze. That voice. She knew that voice. Harrison felt Josie's hand squeeze his tightly. He looked at her, alarmed to see her face pale, her eyes wide with terror. "What's wrong?" he asked. Before she could answer, a man appeared from the crowd, tall, thin, with an unshaven beard and bloodshot eyes. He pointed at Josie. "Hey girl, it really is you. Where the hell have you been?" Vince. The stepfather. The man who had abandoned her on the sidewalk with a bag of clothes. Josie hid behind Harrison, trembling. Her entire body felt like it had turned to ice. "I don't want to go back with him. Please," she whispered, her voice broken with panic. Harrison understood immediately. He stood in front of Josie, protecting her with his body. Asher, sensing the danger, also moved closer to the girl. Vince approached, staggering slightly. He smelled of alcohol, even at that time of the morning. "Hey, you!" he pointed at Harrison. "That's my stepdaughter. I've been looking for her for weeks." Harrison kept his voice calm but firm. "I think you're mistaken." "No, I'm not," Vince insisted, getting angrier. "I'd recognize that face anywhere. Josie, come here now." Behind Harrison, Josie trembled more and more. Asher hugged her, trying to comfort her. "Sir," Harrison said, still controlled, "I suggest you step away. The girl doesn't want to go with you." "And who are you to say that?" "She's my responsibility." Vince took a threatening step forward. Harrison didn't back down. "Responsibility. You abandoned her on the street. That's a crime." "I didn't abandon anyone. I told her to wait." Vince tried to look over Harrison's shoulder. "Josie, stop this nonsense and come here." People around them were beginning to stop, watching the scene. A woman nearby took her phone out of her pocket, ready to call the police if necessary. "I'm going to call security," Harrison warned. "Step away now." Something in Harrison's tone of voice finally seemed to get through to Vince. He took a step back, still furious but more cautious. "This isn't over," he threatened. "She's my stepdaughter. I have rights." "Rights you lost when you abandoned her," Harrison replied, and without looking away. Vince looked one last time at where Josie was hiding, muttered something unintelligible, and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Harrison only relaxed when he was sure he was gone. He turned to Josie, who was still trembling, clutching Asher's hand. "He's gone," Harrison assured her, bending down to hug her. "It's okay now." But it wasn't. Harrison knew it. Vince now knew where Josie was, and he could come back. The situation that had once seemed simple had just become complicated. "Let's go home," he decided. "The bookstore can wait for another day." In the car, Josie remained silent, hugging the doll Lena, which she had insisted on bringing for the outing. Asher sat beside her in the back seat, not letting go of her hand. Harrison drove with his mind racing. As soon as they got home, he would call Elena. This changed everything. They needed to act fast. "Fjord, he appeared out of nowhere," Harrison explained, his voice tense on the phone. Josie was terrified. "This complicates things," Elena replied from the other end of the line, "but it could also help our case. Ed proves that he recognizes her as his stepdaughter, and at the same time confirms the abandonment. What do we do now? I'm going to file for a restraining order immediately, and we'll expedite the temporary custody process. We need an official statement from Josie about the abandonment." Harrison looked out the office window. In the yard, Asher and Josie were playing with a ball, seemingly recovered from the morning scare. But he knew Josie was still shaken. He could see it in the anxious glances she cast toward the house, as if expecting Vince to appear at any moment. "Do whatever is necessary," he told Elena. "I won't let him take her." After hanging up, Harrison continued to watch the children. The relationship between them surprised him every day. Asher, always chatty and full of energy, had found in Josie an attentive listener and a playmate. Josie, in turn, seemed to blossom with his friendship. She smiled more, talked more, allowed herself to be a child again. They had created a bond that went beyond the cohabitation forced by circumstances. It was a sibling bond, protective, complicit, genuine. Harrison knew that the decision he had silently made in recent weeks to proceed with the adoption, to make Josie a permanent part of his family, was the right one. Not just for her, but for all of them. That night, after Asher had fallen asleep, Harrison found Josie still awake, sitting on the edge of her bed, hugging the doll. "Can't sleep?" he asked, sitting beside her. She shook her head. "I'm afraid he'll come back." "He won't get near you," Harrison assured her. "I'm taking steps to make sure of that." Josie looked up, assessing the sincerity of that promise. "Hi, what kind of steps?" "Legal ones. I'm talking to a lawyer so you can stay here officially, so that no one can take you away." A cautious hope lit up Josie's face. "I can stay forever?" Harrison smiled, touched by the simplicity and depth of the question. "If you want to, yes, that's what I'm trying to arrange." "I want to," she replied without hesitation. Harrison put his arm around her shoulders, pulling her into a sideways hug. "Then we'll make it happen." They stayed like that for a moment, in silence. Then Josie said, so quietly he almost didn't hear, "I've never had a place to stay before. Not for real." Harrison felt a lump in his throat. "You do now. And you always will, as long as I can ensure it." He realized that, despite the fear still present in her eyes, there was something more now, something that wasn't there when he found her in the park. A sense of belonging, a quiet certainty that she had finally found her place in the world. When Harrison left the room, after making sure Josie was comfortable and ready to sleep, he made a decision. He would not only proceed with the adoption process, he would do so with all possible urgency and determination. Josie deserved not just a roof, food, and school. She deserved the certainty of a family, a permanent home, a place where fear could finally give way to trust. And he would do everything to ensure that for her, the family court had a solemn air that morning. Shiny marble hallways, dark wooden doors, voices speaking in respectful whispers. Harrison adjusted his tie, feeling more nervous than he had in a long time. Beside him, Josie wore a navy blue dress and black shoes they had bought especially for the occasion. Her hair was pulled back in a neatly arranged ponytail, and she held Harrison's hand tightly. "Are you okay?" Harrison asked, noticing the tension in the small fingers squeezing his. Josie nodded, but her restless eyes scanned the hallway, as if expecting to see Vince appear at any moment. Eleanor Morales, the lawyer, approached them with a folder in her hand. Her grey suit and confident posture conveyed a sense of security they both needed at that moment. "Good morning," she greeted with a brief smile. "Are you ready?" "Yes," Harrison answered for both of them. "Josie." Eleanor knelt to be at the girl's level. "Remember what we talked about. The judge might want to hear from you today. You just need to tell the truth, in your own words." Josie nodded seriously. In recent weeks, she had prepared for this moment with the help of Elena and a child psychologist who worked with the court. Still, the idea of being in the same room as Vince made her stomach churn. "You'll do great," Harrison assured her, squeezing her hand, "and I'll be there the whole time." A door opened at the end of the hall, and a court officer came out. "Case of Wells and Baker. The judge is ready to see you." Harrison took a deep breath. It was time. The courtroom was smaller than he had imagined, more intimate. There was no jury, just the judge, a middle-aged man with graying hair and a serious expression, sitting at his elevated bench. There were tables for the lawyers, chairs for the parties involved, and a few seats in the back for observers. And there was Vince, sitting next to his lawyer, a younger man in a cheap suit and a nervous expression. Vince looked different today. Hair combed, beard trimmed, clean clothes. An attempt to appear respectable that didn't fool anyone who truly knew him. When he saw Josie, his eyes lit up with something Harrison couldn't identify. It didn't seem like affection, perhaps just the gleam of the possibility of gaining something from this situation. "All rise," the officer announced as the judge entered. After the initial proceedings, Elena presented the case. She spoke of Josie's abandonment, of how Harrison found and took her in, of the relationship that blossomed between her and the Wells family. She presented reports from the social worker who had visited the house, depositions from the psychologist who was counseling Josie, and even a letter from Asher's teacher, who had observed the children's interaction at school. "Your Honor," Elena concluded, "we ask that custody of Josie Baker be granted to Mr. Harrison Wells, who has provided her not only with shelter, but a true home." Vince's lawyer stood up next. He argued that his client was the girl's only legal guardian after her mother's death, that he had gone through financial and emotional difficulties, but that he was now stable and ready to resume his responsibilities. "Mr. Baker loves his stepdaughter," the lawyer stated, with a conviction that didn't seem sincere even to himself, "and he requests the opportunity to correct a mistake made in a moment of desperation." The judge listened to both sides attentively, making occasional notes. When the lawyers finished, he addressed Vince directly. "Mr. Baker, why did you abandon your stepdaughter?" Vince shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "I didn't abandon her, Your Honor. I needed to take care of some things. I planned to come back." "After how long? A few hours, maybe a day? And why did it take you weeks to look for her?" Vince swallowed hard. "I did look for her, but I thought she had gone to a shelter, so you decided she was better off there," the judge completed, raising an eyebrow. "No, Vince glanced at his lawyer, who seemed equally uncomfortable. "Look, I went through a rough patch after Lena died. I wasn't in a position to take care of a child, but now I am. I have a steady job, an apartment." The judge watched him for a long moment before asking the question that would change everything. "Mr. Baker, what do you really want in this case?" Vince hesitated, looking at Josie and then at Harrison. There was a calculation happening behind his eyes. "I want what's best for Josie," he said finally, "but I also think I deserve some compensation. After all, I took care of her for a year after her mother died. That has a value." A murmur of indignation swept through the room. Vince had just revealed his true intentions. "Are you suggesting financial compensation in exchange for custody?" the judge asked, his voice as cold as ice. Vince's lawyer tried to intervene, but it was too late. "Yes," Vince answered directly. "Wells has money. If he wants to keep her so badly, he can pay for it." The judge pressed his lips in disapproval. He consulted some documents in front of him and then looked up at the side where Josie was sitting. "Josie Baker," he called, his voice softening considerably. "I would like to hear what you have to say about all this." Josie looked at Harrison, who nodded encouragingly. Eleanor leaned in to whisper something in her ear, a final reminder that she could speak freely. With a deliberate movement, Josie stood up from her chair. Her small shoulders were straight, her chin held high. There was a surprising dignity in the posture of this 6-year-old girl who had faced more hardships than many adults. "He never took care of me," she said, her voice clear in the silence of the room. "After my mum died, he just yelled at me. He said I cost too much money. And one day, he left me on the sidewalk with a bag of clothes." Vince fidgeted in his chair, uncomfortable. "And how do you feel about living with Mr. Wells and his son?" the judge asked. Josie looked at Harrison, and something softened in her face. "I just want to stay with Harrison. This is where I feel safe." The simplicity and strength of that statement made the judge smile slightly. He studied Josie for another moment before turning his attention back to the documents in front of him. "I appreciate your honesty, Josie. You may sit down now." The judge looked at everyone present, his face serious again. Considering all the evidence presented, including the reports from the social worker and the psychologist, the direct testimony of the child, and Mr. Baker's admission that he is seeking financial compensation, he paused. "It is my decision to grant full custody of Josie Baker to Mr. Harrison Wells, with the right to initiate adoption proceedings if he so desires." He banged the gavel once, the sound echoing through the room. Case closed. It was as if a great weight had been lifted from Harrison's shoulders. He could hardly believe it. It was over. Vince no longer had any rights over Josie. She was safe. Vince stood up abruptly, his face contorted with anger. He muttered something to his lawyer and left the room without looking back. His lawyer just shrugged at Eleanor, as if to say, "I did what I could," and followed his client. Eleanor smiled at Harrison, shaking his hand. "Congratulations, she's officially yours now." Harrison nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Then he turned to Josie, who was looking at him with an expression that mixed relief and uncertainty, as if she still couldn't completely believe what had happened. He knelt before her. "It's over, Josie. You're going to stay with us. Forever, if you want." Her eyes filled with tears. With a restrained sob, she threw herself into Harrison's arms, who lifted her into his lap and hugged her tightly. No words were needed at that moment. Just the hug, the warmth, the feeling of security that would finally not be taken from her. For the first time in her short life, Josie officially had a home, a place where she belonged. Harrison carried her out of the courtroom, still hugged to him, her face hidden in his neck. In the hallway, Asher was waiting anxiously with his paternal grandmother, who had stayed with him during the hearing. "So," Asher asked, bouncing with anxiety, "did it work? Is Josie going to live with us?" Harrison smiled at his son, still holding Josie in his arms. "Yes, son. She's going to stay with us." "Forever," Asher insisted. "Forever," Harrison confirmed. Asher let out a cry of joy and ran to hug his father and Josie, the three of them together in a hug that sealed not just a court decision, but the birth of a new family. "And where are we going now?" Asher asked, hopping beside his father as they left the courthouse. The sun was shining brightly that afternoon, as if the sky itself were celebrating the judge's decision. Harrison held Josie's hand, a hand that now, officially, he had the right to hold, to protect, to guide. "I think we need to celebrate, don't you?" Harrison smiled, looking at Josie. "Any suggestions?" She thought for a moment, still processing everything that had happened. An hour ago, her future was uncertain. Now, she had a family, a permanent home. It was hard to believe. "Can we go to Chuck's?" Asher suggested, referring to their favorite diner, where huge hamburgers were served with mountains of fries. Harrison raised his eyebrows at Josie. "What do you think? Is Chuck's a good idea?" "I've never been there," she answered shyly. "Then it's decided," Harrison declared. "Chuck's it is." The restaurant was just a few blocks from the courthouse. It was a cozy place, with red leather booths, black and white checkered floors, and an old jukebox in the corner. The walls were decorated with classic movie posters and old photos of the city. They settled into a booth near the window. A waiter in a red and white uniform brought menus and took their orders: cheeseburgers for everyone, extra fries and milkshakes, chocolate for Harrison, strawberry for Asher, and vanilla for Josie, who had never tried one before. "When Mom won a big case at work, we always came here to celebrate," Asher told Josie while they waited for the food. It was like a tradition. Harrison felt a pang in his heart, hearing his son talk about his mother so naturally. It had been a long time since Asher had mentioned Rebecca without sadness dominating his voice. It was a sign of healing. "Was your mom a lawyer?" Josie asked. "She was," Harrison replied. "One of the best. She worked on human rights cases, helped people who needed protection. Like you did with me," Josie observed, with a perceptiveness that sometimes surprised Harrison. He smiled, moved. "Yes, exactly like I did with you." The waiter returned with the milkshakes. Large, cold glasses, topped with whipped cream and a cherry. Josie's eyes widened when she saw hers. It was bigger than any dessert she had ever tasted. "How do you drink this?" she asked, looking at the straw and the long spoon. "Like this," Asher demonstrated, dipping the spoon into the whipped cream and then bringing it to his mouth. "And then you use the straw to drink. It's the best thing in the world." Josie mimicked the movement, getting a little whipped cream. When she tasted it, her eyes lit up with surprise and pleasure. "This is so good," she exclaimed, dipping the spoon in again. Harrison watched, delighted. Each of Josie's new experiences was a rediscovery for him too, a reminder of the small joys that adults sometimes forgot to appreciate. "Hey, Dad," Asher called, raising his glass. "I think we should make a toast." "Excellent idea," Harrison agreed, picking up his glass. "Josie, you just touch your glass to ours like this." She nodded, picking up her milkshake with both hands. "A toast to my sister," Asher declared, extending his glass to the center of the table. Josie felt her face flush. Sister. It was the first time Asher had called her that directly, not just a friend or a guest, but family, part of him, part of them. "And to my dad who found me in the park," she replied softly, touching her glass to the other two. It was Harrison's turn to feel the emotion tightening his throat. Dad. She had called him Dad. The moment was interrupted by the arrival of the hamburgers, huge and appetizing. They ate with pleasure, talking about simple things, plans for the weekend, a movie they wanted to see, the upcoming science fair at Asher's school. As they were finishing, Josie took something out of the small bag Eleanor had given her to keep her belongings in during the hearing. "I made this yesterday," she said, handing a folded piece of paper to Harrison. "It's for you." Harrison carefully unfolded the paper. It was a drawing made with colored pencils, 3 figures holding hands in front of a house. The largest figure, clearly him, was in the middle, holding the hands of 2 smaller figures, Asher and Josie. Above the house, written in careful, colorful letters, it read, "The House of the Heart." Harrison felt his eyes well up. He passed the drawing to Asher, who examined it with interest. "Look, that's me. You even drew my red sneakers," Asher exclaimed. "You draw really well, Josie." She smiled, shy but obviously pleased with their reaction. "It's perfect," Harrison said, taking the drawing back. "I'm going to frame it as soon as we get home. It will look perfect in the living room, along with the other family photos." Family. The word echoed between them, heavy with meaning. When they got home, Harrison did exactly what he had promised. He found a suitable frame and put Josie's drawing on the living room wall, next to the family photographs, including a newly framed one, the photo of Josie's mother, which used to be crumpled in her pocket. Seeing the 2 images side by side, the past and the present, what was lost and what was found, Harrison felt that a circle was closing. "Josie," he called, after everything was arranged, "I have a surprise for you. Can you come here?" She came from the kitchen, where she was helping Asher make lemonade. Harrison took her by the hand and led her upstairs. They passed Asher's room, the bathroom, the master bedroom, and stopped in front of a closed door at the end of the hall. "This room has been empty since we moved in," Harrison explained. "We used it for storage for a while, but I cleaned it out last week." He opened the door. The room was large, with a big window overlooking the backyard. The walls were white, the floor light wood. There was only a simple bed against the wall, a nightstand, and an empty closet. "Now this will be yours," Harrison said, watching her reaction. "You can choose everything exactly as you want it. The color of the walls, the furniture, the decor, everything." Josie entered the room slowly, as if in disbelief. She had been sleeping in the guest room until then, a nice but impersonal space. This was different. This would be hers. "Can I really choose everything?" she asked, spinning slowly to take in the space. "Absolutely everything," Harrison confirmed. "We can go to the stores tomorrow for you to see what you like. Curtains, a comforter, lamps, a rug, whatever you want." Josie walked to the window and looked out. From there she could see the large oak tree in the yard, and beyond it, the swing set Harrison had installed for Asher. I think I want a lilac comforter," she said finally, turning to him. "And maybe a moon-shaped lamp, and a rug with stars on it." Harrison smiled. "That sounds perfect," she continued, gaining confidence as she spoke. "And maybe the wall could be light blue like the sky, with some clouds painted near the ceiling." "Like a starry sky with the moon," Harrison agreed. "It will be beautiful." Josie sat on the edge of the bed, running her hand over the mattress. A whole room just for her, a space of her own in a permanent place. It was almost too much to comprehend. Harrison sat down next to her. "Josie, I also wanted to talk about school." "School," she repeated, suddenly tense. "Yes. I want you to go to the same school as Asher. Are you up for it?" The relief relaxed her shoulders. "Yes, I want to, but can I go with him?" "Always," Harrison guaranteed. "Every day. You'll go together and come back together." Josie's smile was like a ray of sunshine after a storm, bright, warm, transformative. "We can go buy your uniform and supplies tomorrow," Harrison continued. "And on Monday, you start." "I've already spoken with the principal, and she's excited to meet you." "What if the other kids don't like me?" Josie asked, a shadow of insecurity crossing her face. "They will love you," Harrison guaranteed. "But even if it takes them a while to really get to know you, Asher will be there. And I'll be waiting when school is out." That guarantee that she wouldn't be alone, that someone would be waiting for her, was all Josie needed to hear. She nodded, satisfied, and leaned back slightly against Harrison's arm. "Thank you," she said simply. They sat there for a while in comfortable silence. Through the open window, they could hear Asher in the yard, talking to the neighbor over the fence. Birds sang in the trees, the gentle breeze swayed the curtains. Josie got up and went to the small table beside the bed, where she had left the doll, Lena. She picked her up and returned to her seat, hugging her on her lap. "So I think she'll like the new room too," Josie commented, adjusting the doll's flowered dress. "I'm sure she will," Harrison agreed. "You both deserve a beautiful and safe place." He stood up, giving her space to take it all in. "I'm going to see how Asher is doing with the lemonade. Do you want to come, Nash, or would you rather stay here for a bit?" "I'll stay a little longer," she replied, "just to feel the room." Harrison smiled, understanding. "Of course, we'll be downstairs whenever you want to come down." When he left, closing the door gently, Josie remained seated on the bed, the doll in her lap. She looked around, imagining what the room would be like when it was finished. Blue walls like the sky, stars on the rug, the moon shining as a lamp. Through the window, she could hear Harrison and Asher's voices in the yard, laughing about something. The sounds of a family, her family now. Josie hugged the doll tighter and closed her eyes. That strange, warm feeling that had been growing in her chest since the judge's decision finally had a name: belonging. She was, finally, home. The morning of the first day of school arrived bright and sunny. Josie carefully put on her uniform: navy blue skirt, white shirt, knee-high socks, and shiny black shoes. On the embroidered tag, her new name, Josie Wells. In the mirror, she barely recognized herself. She looked like a real student, a normal girl with a normal life. During breakfast, she ate little. Her stomach was tight with nervousness. Harrison prepared the lunchboxes, while Asher enthusiastically talked about the classmates she would meet. "So, what if I don't know the answers to the questions?" Josie asked Harrison, revealing her biggest fear. "The teacher knows about your situation," he smiled reassuringly. "She'll help you. And remember, I'll be waiting at dismissal." On the way to school, Josie watched the other children walking with their parents through the window. Scenes of a normality that now also belonged to her. When they reached the gate, the playground was full of movement and voices. Harrison knelt before her. "Have a great first day. I'm proud of you." The bell rang. It was time to go in. A lump formed in Josie's throat. She looked at the school doors, at the sea of unknown faces. That's when she felt a small hand take hers. Asher smiled at her. "I'm here. It's all going to be okay." She took a deep breath and smiled back. And then, hand in hand, the two of them entered through the large gate, Asher leading the way, Josie's steps becoming steadier and steadier. That evening, sitting on the porch, Harrison watched the children playing tag in the yard. The day had been a success. Josie came home from school full of stories about the teacher, about new friends, about the library with so many books you could read a different one every day for 100 years. Her face, once so tense, now shone with excitement. Harrison smiled, thinking about how quickly life could change. Months ago, it was just him and Asher, carrying the weight of absence together. Now the house was full of life again. "Family is who stays," he murmured, watching the children. "Who chooses? Who cares?" Asher ran inside to take a shower. Josie walked over to the porch and, without saying a word, sat down next to Harrison, snuggling against his shoulder as if it were the most natural place in the world. He put his arm around her, pulling her closer. The first stars were beginning to dot the sky when she finally spoke. "Thank you for not leaving me alone." Harrison squeezed her gently, at a loss